Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Teddy Collins, owner of Spartan Defense and Vice President of Industry Relations with the Colorado State Shooting Association, and Daniel Fenlason, Director of Operations for the Colorado State Shooting Association, or CSSA. Now, recently, the CSSA filed a lawsuit against the state of Colorado to stop Senate Bill 3, the most restrictive gun ban in Colorado history. Well, gentlemen, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having us on.
Well, first off, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, the lawsuit with Senate Bill 3. I mean, so many people across Colorado were excited to see this. It's so egregious. It's just so bad. Daniel, what can you tell us about the lawsuit? How do you think it's going to play out?
Absolutely. After Governor Polis did sign the law into effect, we wanted to make sure that we were working exactly with all of our legal partners, both nationally and locally, to make sure that we had the best possible lawsuit in place to push back against this bill and make sure this egregious, as you mentioned, violation of our rights was attacked in the court, and that they have to play defense for some of the first time in their existence here in Colorado. With the far left has just gotten away with all these anti-gun laws that they passed. And so we got together with Mountain State Legal Foundation, started building our plaintiff bench, which has been a key part in building a strong lawsuit, working with our in-house volunteer legal team, some of our national partners, and obviously our friends over at Mountain State Legal Foundation. And right before we filed this, Mountain State Legal Foundation actually got a big win down in New Mexico against a 7-day waiting period down there, alongside our sister organization in New Mexico, and the National Rifle Association as well down there. And coming off of that win, we saw a really important new precedent being set in our circuit, which we share New Mexico and Colorado. And that precedent is a right to acquire a firearm. For a long time in our circuit, there's been this debate on, obviously we have the right to keep and bear arms, but do we have the right to acquire them? Now, those of us on this call, we believe that we do have the right to acquire a firearm, and it's hard to keep and bear something if you're not allowed to get it. So, what this new ruling that they had down there that established and strengthened the right to acquire gave us a lot of backwind as we walk into this next part once we launch the lawsuit. And with that lawsuit being filed, not only do we have now the precedent of the 7-day waiting period, but we also have a strong plaintiff team, and we'll cover some of those plaintiffs here in a minute. But then beyond that, we're coming off of a big win in the same circuit. And so the governor and the attorney general, they're now having to play defense, and they're seeing effective, thought out, long-term legal strategies being implemented here in the state. And doing so both with national and local partners is really going to put them on their heels, going into not only the next session, but looking into their long-term plans for Colorado and their long-term plans for the Second Amendment in Colorado. They're going to have to now deal with the fact that there is an organized, well thought out, built out plan that has the resources and is continuing to build more resources to bring that legal fight to them and force them to be on the defensive.
Nice. Well, that's definitely exciting. It's good to see the fight. It's good to see so many individuals, so many organizations, everybody stepping up, this big community we have of Second Amendment activists, of gun store owners, even. Teddy, what's it like owning a gun store in Colorado in this post Senate Bill 3 world? I know it hasn't taken effect yet, but still, nonetheless, what's it
Well,
like?
we still have Prop KK that went into effect back in July. So I will say that that is the goal and that is the intent of the anti-gunners out there that are trying to strip away the civil rights and the Second Amendment rights here in the United States. They're trying to do it by taking the stores out. They're trying to do it by strangling us, by choking us, cut by cut, blow by blow. That's what they're doing. So this is something that needs to be fought. It needs to be fought here in Colorado. It needs to be fought anywhere it occurs, because if it can happen here, it's going to happen everywhere. So I will say this to those that are watching out there: go support your local gun stores, the ones that have actually been actively involved out there, that are actually doing things to try to fight for your 2A rights. You don't see a lot of big box stores doing that, but you do see your local mom and pop stores going up to the Capitol, testifying, talking to their representatives, and actually trying to achieve something. So support those that support you. That's my biggest message that I can put out there to your viewers tonight.
And building off that Prop KK lawsuit that I know we want to dig into tonight, I think that's an excellent example of just the unity that's being created from the complete lack of respect that we're seeing from the anti-gunners here in the state. we're seeing on that lawsuit, you saw several national groups all join together, groups that typically haven't worked together in the past. You saw the National
Yeah.
Rifle Association, you saw the Firearms Policy Coalition, you saw the Second Amendment Foundation, and you saw us, and we're carrying that load together. And so we're all of our legal teams pitched in to make sure that that is the strongest lawsuit we could put forward with the best plaintiffs that we could find, to really push back against this narrative that you cannot tax a constitutional right, and you should never treat a constitutional right as a second class right, which is what they've been doing. Excise taxes are built to try to get people to stop interacting with either a substance or behavior that the government doesn't like. And they should have no opinion on my right or your right or any of one of your listeners' rights to go and keep and bear and acquire firearms. And through this tax, what they were saying is not only is the Second Amendment second class right, they were also saying that you, as a gun owner or as someone who is a hunter or participates in the sports shooting or the shooting sports, or as a gun store owner like Teddy, you are committing a sin against our society by participating in this. So that's why excise taxes are called sin taxes. And typically they're obviously applied to things like alcohol or marijuana or other things. And they're meant to discourage use. And can you imagine the outrage we would have if we had a tax on voting or a tax on assembly or a tax on speech or religion or fill in any of the other rights that are protected in our Constitution, given to us by God, but outlined and defended by the founding documents of our nation? And if we actually put a tax on that, and there have been parts of the country that have done that in the past and they got struck down in the courts. And so one of the things that we were able to do when we brought those national partners in and had very strong plaintiffs here, we were able to bring in a group called Cooper and Kirk, who is a DC based firm who beat the Cook County and Illinois firearms excise tax, has had several victories in the process against California's excise tax on firearms and ammunition, and could drive that one up to the Supreme Court because Governor Newsom keeps losing that in his own courts out there in California. And so when we are able to show this unity, that we're able to show that we're willing to be a team player, that we're all working together, we can see some of these national groups step in, and that's something that we want to continue to replicate on future lawsuits. Because even though we have these two right now, there's a list, and I kid you not, 17 long, that we are investigating right now. And as soon as we have the resources, we have plenty of ammunition that we can throw into this fight. Because at this point, over the last several decades, the anti-gunners have just passed law after law after law, selling this lie that these laws are going to stop mass shootings, they're going to bring down violent crime, and we all know that to not be the case. And so whether we're talking about the regulations that Teddy Store has to go through now that are duplicates of the federal regulations, the stricter state regulations, this insane ammunition bill that they passed this year, the gun show law bill that they passed this year, and just going back over the last couple of decades, there's just law after law after law that it's prime for us to go and hit in the courts, and we are in a great position to continue to push this fight.
Yeah, do you mind if I add to that real quick?
Go for
I
it.
just want to say that we have had taxes on voting rights in the past. It's called a poll tax, and it's unconstitutional. So,
Mhm.
I equate the excise tax and all this red tape that they're putting on this industry as a direct violation of someone's constitutional and civil rights.
Yep.
Yeah, well said, definitely. And I really appreciate what you said there, Daniel, about creating a second class rights, second class citizens. And that's something I've thought when I heard about Senate Bill 3 the first time. It's like here we have all the states surrounding Colorado, and we have citizens there, individuals who are able to fully exercise their Second Amendment rights, at least, to the extent that federal law allows. Don't get me started on that. But
Right.
nonetheless, here in Colorado, we're second class citizens compared to our neighbors to the north or the east, the west, whichever way you want to go, really. And it's so kind of sad and kind of just so wrong. And it really shows the disparity between how our politicians, how these legislators and governors and others, think of us in terms of just who we are as individuals and our ability to defend ourselves, the rights that we have, and how that differs from other states. So it's absolutely shameful. It's absolutely shocking. But Daniel, you brought up the plaintiffs several times. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. Who are the plaintiffs? Why does that make a difference in the case? And what does it matter about the plaintiffs?
The plaintiffs matter for a couple of reasons. One is it gives you standing. And so I have to be able to show, and not me, the lawyers. You don't want me to be your lawyer. I wouldn't even be a good one on TV. But the lawyers have to make an example and say, hey, this is how this law would negatively affect and is a violation of constitutional rights or legal protections on this individual or this business. So the excise tax is a little easier. There's those national plaintiffs that we covered, the NRA, FPC, SAF, saying we have members in the state that are being violated through this excise tax. And then we have individual plaintiffs in that. And so there's two. There's Magnum Shooting Center down in Colorado Springs, which is it has two different locations. They're an indoor range and also an FFL. And we have Zachary Langston is our other plaintiff on that. He's a pastor out in Falcon, Colorado. And in both instances, we show that these excise taxes are negatively affecting their ability to keep, bear, and acquire firearms. And so in the case of Zachary Langston, we lay out the case that he was saving up for a Daniel Defense rifle. And with the excise tax, he had to push that purchase off because that extra 6.5% on a rifle that's that nice is going to make it unavailable for him to purchase. And additionally, his ammunition is now going to be 6.5% more expensive. And so for him to be able to go out and train, he has to build that into his budget. And that's going to limit his ability to train. It's going to limit his ability to go out and target shoot. It's going to limit his ability to be able to keep and bear arms to the point that the government needs to be scared of the individual. And so the other side of that is Magnum, which is making the same argument that this is negatively affecting their ability to provide those firearms, to provide those ammunitions. And Teddy can obviously speak very much to this as a gun store owner himself. This is increasing costs for everybody. And so people are buying less firearms, less ammunition, or they're trying to get around this law by buying out of state or however they want to do that. And ultimately what this is doing, and Teddy phrased this very well in our press conference when we announced the SB3 lawsuit, this is economic warfare. This is a complete and utter attack on our ability to make sure that we can keep and bear arms and train with those arms and practice with those arms and be able to go out and hunt and compete with those arms. This is a direct attack on that, but it's also a direct attack on our ability to have those arms available for us, have that ammunition available for us. And so that's the plaintiffs on the excise tax. But what those plaintiffs do is they do two things. One, they paint a story. Here we have a pastor, small business owner, who has two young kids at home, who has a wonderful wife that he loves, and he is now having to make decisions about how he's able to protect his family because of this lawsuit or because of this excise tax. And this lawsuit is looking for a remedy, is trying to say that this is not the solution, and these are unconstitutional laws and taxes that are put into place. Then for the SB3, we have several more plaintiffs, mainly because that bill is just so expansive. And it doesn't just attack the way or the training and permit to purchase process that we'll outline, I'm sure. But there's other parts in that affecting binary triggers, force reset triggers, increasing the punishment for having a 30-round magazine. There's a whole bunch that's stuck into that bill. And so we have plaintiffs that cover the whole spectrum on it. And so one of those plaintiffs, he's a 19-year-old. He just turned 19 in August, and he will not be old enough to purchase a firearm before this law goes into effect. And so one of the arguments that we were prepared for was that they were just going to say, well, why don't you just buy whatever gun you want before the law goes into effect and then sue us then? Well, this guy doesn't have that chance. He's not going to have that opportunity. His rights are being harmed right now. And he is a great example of the future generations that we need to be fighting for these rights for and developing those future activists, those future voters, and those future leaders into the Second Amendment movement. We have a domestic abuse survivor who is on the security team of her church and concealed carries every day because she refuses to be a victim. And this law being put into place will prevent her from being able to access the firearms that she needs to be able to be safe and to feel safe. We have a gay Jewish Lebanese man who has seen, especially after the Boulder attack, that this state is not capable of stopping hate-filled attacks and that he has to be responsible for his own safety. And so the groups that he identifies with are under attack, and he wants to be able to defend himself. We have Israel Del Toro, who is a veteran, and he got hit by an IED in Afghanistan. And he lost all of use in one hand and majority of use in the other. And the only way that he is able to operate a firearm is through a brace on an AR pistol with a trigger that is being banned by this law. And so Governor Polis and Attorney General Weiser looked at someone like Israel Del Toro and said, you don't deserve to have a firearm. You don't deserve to be able to protect yourself. You don't deserve to be able to protect your property, and you don't deserve to be able to protect your rights. This guy went back and got re-enlisted after he got hit with this IED, with the burns all over his body, and was the first 100% disabled veteran to ever be able to re-enlist into the military. And so this guy loves our country. He's already fought for our rights. And Governor Polis and Attorney General Weiser looked at him and said, absolutely not, you don't deserve a firearm. And it is completely ridiculous that these people hide behind their own armed security and look at everyday Coloradans and say, absolutely not, you're not allowed to have that because you scare me or you don't vote the right way. And they're treating us again as second-class citizens. And so those are some of the plaintiffs that we have on this. And each one obviously paints a different story, but they're stories of everyday Coloradans, right? These are not unusual stories. I know plenty of people who are domestic abuse survivors who utilize the Second Amendment to protect themselves and their family. I know plenty of people who have been injured in Afghanistan and Iraq who want to be able to protect themselves and their family and their rights, and want to be able to utilize the Second Amendment as a coping mechanism with some of the PTSD that they struggle with through competition shootings and things like that. Two of the other plaintiffs that we have, one has top secret clearance, was former law enforcement in the military, and this bill doesn't say that he has enough training already to be able to go get this firearm. He has to go through all this processes, even though he has top secret clearance and was in the military. We have another one who's a firearms instructor, who is the one that would actually be giving out the trainings for this bill. And he is not allowed to go purchase firearms without going through this process. This bill was written in the middle of the night, was written completely by Bloomberg shills and shoved through the legislature. And it was clearly not written by anyone who knew anything about guns. And when they put this into practice, they didn't think they were going to see this kind of negative result from pushing this law through. And now they're seeing a real organized, fully funded, fully ready legal challenge to them, and they don't know how to respond. In fact, Governor Polis said no comment when he was asked about this lawsuit because he wasn't ready for this. He's not ready to see what happens when the Second Amendment community puts aside our differences and comes together and says, hey, we are absolutely all against this and we can join together in that fight.
I mean, just look at the coalition that CSSA has put together for this lawsuit. It literally represents, like he said, almost every single average day Coloradan out there. I also just want to point out that amendments were introduced for almost every single one of these concerns that we're suing over. They denied it. They thumbed their noses at us. They looked down on us. They cut us off in our speaking time. We produced amendments. There was amendments produced by the Republican Party that would have, for example, put exceptions into the law for people that had protective orders or for people for ADA. They denied it all. They even went as far in the legislature, and it's disgraceful to say this, or for them to say this, but in the legislature they stated because there was a veteran amendment that was put into place that they wanted to get passed, and they denied it. And they said they were afraid that veterans would go into gun stores, buy items, and then sell them to people who were not eligible. They essentially called veterans criminals, and that's insane to me. It's not common sense. It's not common sense.
Definitely no common sense at all with any of this. It's absolutely wild. And Daniel, you brought up a great point. These people have no idea about firearms. They don't understand the firearms community. They don't understand what these guns even do and how they operate. I mean, so much of this language is so confusing, I think. And, Teddy, I'd love to hear kind of the perspective of your customers, people coming into the gun shop over this last year during this whole fight in the legislature and even now. I mean, are people confused? Do people understand what's going on? And what's just the common reaction of the average Coloradan who's going into a gun store these days about what's happening?
Well, a lot of it's shock, right? Because they go to check out, maybe they haven't purchased a gun since the new excise tax went into effect or something of that nature, and they're shocked by the total that there's now an additional 6.5% on top of the 8.2% sales tax that Colorado charges. Guns are expensive, ammo is already expensive. They're already being taxed on the federal level, so there's a lot of shock. There's a lot of that don't understand. They think it's the stores, so they're taking their business out of state. They're ordering online to try to avoid the excise tax, even though online retailers are supposed to be collecting it and rendering it to the state of Colorado as well. Unfortunately, that's not a fair level playing field because how is Colorado going to enforce that against people that do not live in the state of Colorado? They have no jurisdiction there. So it's not being done across the board unless we're talking about major online retailers, without going into names, but you can think of a few. That being said, it's definitely there's shock, there's confusion, and there's anger out there. There's a lot of anger. Like even people who are, I'll be honest, I have customers who are on the left side of the aisle, and they're upset about it. They don't understand. They're upset at Polis. They're upset at this legislator for passing these unconstitutional bills and affecting their ability to purchase, exercise, and train.
Wow. Yeah, it is so unfortunate. And I think, Teddy, you brought up earlier the point that they're trying to chase the gun shops out of Colorado. And I've thought that for years. When we saw Hickenlooper push a lot of this stuff, now we see Polis pushing a lot of it too. But it seems like, I really do believe, not to sound conspiratorial or anything, but you get rid of these gun shops and you get a lot of people, these pro 2A people, pro Second Amendment, pro gun people are leaving the state. I mean, I know
Yeah.
you both are probably hearing it all the time. We see it online every day. I'm leaving Colorado because of how bad it is. And a lot of it has to do with the gun laws. And we see these businesses flee. Well, what does that do to the voting demographic? You know what I mean? All of a sudden now you have these good Second Amendment voters, probably more conservative type voters, pro-liberty voters, I would call them, leaving the state. And it seems like they're almost trying to use these policies to kind of influence the electorate and really trying to shape the landscape we have here in Colorado. And it's absolutely wild. I mean, it's so intentional and it's so obvious, at least, that they're trying to just totally deny us our God-given right to self-defense. And it's absolutely shameful. So I applaud,
You go even further. I had a conversation with one of the senators during the legislative session, and I told him this. I'm like, you're going to put all the mom and pop businesses out of business. You're going to run them out of Colorado. And their response was, that's already happening with big box stores, which is not true. And not in the gun industry. The gun industry isn't there yet because you have to have someone where you can go and have something lawfully transferred. Your big box stores don't really take care of that as much as your small mom and pop stores do as far as paperwork and things of that nature. They don't do the transfers. So they were just blunt about it. They don't care. They don't care. The amount of jobs, though, that the FFLs and the industry brings in here in Colorado, as well as the revenue, considering we're facing a revenue shortfall significantly here in Colorado, is it's a lot. It's a lot, and they're pushing that away when they should be bringing it in. And even with Prop KK, we look at where those funds are going. We look where they've allocated those funds. I'm not against the tax, or I'm sorry, I'm not for the tax in the first place, right? But at the same time, like, could they have better allocated those funds instead of putting an X amount of percentage towards veterans, the rest towards domestic violence in a slush fund, basically a piggy bank that they can pull for whatever they want? Maybe they should have done school security if they're concerned about, mass shootings that are occurring here in the state of Colorado. I know many schools here in the state of Colorado that do not have armed guards. That's unacceptable. We can have armed guards at a courthouse. We can have armed guards at an airport. We can have armed guards at most of your post offices out there, but we can't have one at our children to protect our children's schools. Doesn't make any sense.
And I think Teddy brings up a really strong point here. They've suggested all these laws are meant to stop mass shootings, to stop violent crime with firearms. I am a school shooting survivor, and the school shooting that I survived was in Seattle, in Washington State. So one of the strictest gun control states in the country, and one of the strictest gun control cities in that state. And that the sign that said it was a gun-free zone at the front of my school didn't stop this guy from coming to commit murder. All the laws they had passed, all the taxes they had passed didn't stop this guy from coming and commit murder. The fact that our school didn't have armed security and didn't allow for veterans or retired law enforcement from be able to carry on campus didn't stop this guy from coming to commit murder. The only thing that these laws did was make sure that my school was a soft target, that my school was primed to be attacked. And when you bring that up to these anti-gunners, one of two things happen. One, they say, I don't care, we're passing this. Or two, their whole world, the whole thing that they've built on for these laws starts to crumble. And we point out, 94% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones. Concealed carry holders are less than half as likely to commit a crime than law enforcement. Both of those quotes, or both of those stats, are from the Dr. John Lott from the Crime Prevention Research Center. When you start applying logic and you pull away this emotional story that they've been weaving around gun control, it's clear that there's really only one purpose to gun control. It is to, again, treat us like second-class citizens, push good voters out of the state, stop good businesses like Teddy's from being able to operate. And the second is to make sure that by the time they want to go after any of our other rights, we're not able to defend them with the Second Amendment. Because ultimately, if someone is a big fan of the First Amendment, a big fan of any of the other constitutionally protected rights, or those innate rights that have been given to us by our Creator, they have to be a fan of the Second Amendment. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that's stopping them from coming and shutting down our churches, coming and shutting down our speech, shutting down free press, forcing us to not be able to assemble, is the fact that we are armed as a society, and we have a dedicated society, even here in Colorado, Colorado, who is committed to protecting our freedoms from the government. That is the original purpose of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was not made for the Great Deer Uprising of 1776. It was made because our founders just fought a war over a tax. And if we don't have that same level of courage now, we're going to be losing all these rights by the time that my son is old enough to vote. He's not going to have these rights in place. And so we have to have the same level of courage now. And I think one of the things that has happened here as some of these folks have left the state, and I understand the reasoning behind it, but the people that are left, have dug our heels in and we are not moving. And so either the government's going to move or the courts are going to make them move. Because at the end of the day, I am not giving up my rights. I'm not allowing for Colorado to give up their rights, and I am not giving up the rights for my son.
Awesome. Well said. Well, I really appreciate you both. Thank you so much for all your efforts, everything you do, and especially Teddy being a gun store owner. We definitely need to see more gun store owners, more people in the industry show up. So I really applaud all your efforts there. That is awesome. And I hear there's a banquet coming up kind of later this month, the Shots for Freedom banquet. What can you guys tell us about that?
So Shots for Freedom is going to be held at Magnum Shooting Center South here in Colorado Springs. It's going to be on the 20th and the 21st. We're going to have vendors from all over the industry, all over the country there. You can come try a plethora of different firearms from tons of different manufacturers, both here in the state of Colorado and from across the country. You can even take out several different machine guns out of the range, be able to try everything from a World War II Sten, which is a British paratrooper machine gun, 9mm from World War II, all the way up to BTXs, belt feds, whatever you guys want to try out on the range. But then also, and I'm more excited for this, I love machine guns. I think machine guns are great, but I'm more excited for this part. Our sheriff down here, Sheriff Roy Ball, is going to be running a BB gun range sponsored by Daisy Red Ryder. And he's going to bring his armor personnel carrier so the kids can climb up there, get some pictures on that, be able to shoot with the sheriff, shoot with the posse, shoot with a couple sheriff deputies there. And we're even going to have a Nerf gun range for kids who might be a little too scared to jump over to the BB gun range. Because one of the things that we want to make sure is that the Second Amendment in our event itself is family friendly. We're here to make sure that my kids and my grandkids and my grandkids all have these rights in place. And so that's going to be the 20th and the 21st. Then we're going to have a banquet on the 20th with Congressman Hagman from Wyoming. She's the one that unseated Liz Cheney and was a Second Amendment lawyer before she ran for Congress, and was working with the law group that we brought on for this for the Senate Bill 3 lawsuit that also won against the New Mexico case that we mentioned earlier. She litigated two different cases against the ATF, and that's going to be on the 20th at the DoubleTree down here in Colorado Springs. We're going to have dozens of gun giveaways, dozens of gun raffles, silent and live auctions. Then there's going to be tons of ways that people can contribute to the fight, contribute to our efforts. But really, we just want to show people there is hope in Colorado. We are not done fighting, and we're not going anywhere. And so I hope this is the first of many events that we're going to have, and we have tons and tons of different things that people can participate in, whether it's at the range or at the banquet, and we hope to see everybody there.
Absolutely. Come out and join us for a night of firearms, friendship, and fellowship, guys. Hope to see you there.
Absolutely. And you can get tickets at cssa.org/events. And we would really, really love to see everybody there.
Perfect. And all of the links at freestatecolorado.com for anybody out there who didn't catch that. But, thank you guys. Really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Keep up the fight. This definitely gives me a lot of hope and optimism. And hopefully people watching also feel like, hey, we have an opportunity here. I truly believe Colorado will be free one day. Like you said, I'm not giving up. I know a lot of people out there are not giving up. And we're more organized, more mobilized, and motivated than ever to fight for freedom and liberty here in Colorado. So just need more people in the fight. And great to meet you guys. And really look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks
There's
so much.
hope on the horizon, Brandon. There's hope on the horizon, Brandon. Hopefully yourself and your viewers that watch this show can get involved, help us so that we can help them. Thank you. Thank you for having us tonight.
Awesome. All right, guys, take care.
God bless.